Hi, and welcome back to Skrach. Today we're going to make pork shish kebabs with a raspberry orange glaze. If you're using bamboo or wooden skewers, one of the first things you want to do is to let the skewers soak for at least 30 minutes. This is so that the skewers don't burn while in the oven or on the grill. For today's recipe, I'll be using a red onion, a couple of bell peppers, some grape tomatoes, approximately 3/4 of a pound of thick chops, 1.5 teaspoons of cumin, a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon each of salt, cayenne pepper, garlic powder, and black pepper, a 1/4 cup of raspberry jelly, and a tablespoon of orange juice. Next, I'm going to cut my vegetables. I'll start with the onion. With onions, one of the first things I like to do is just to cut the onion in half. And this is whether I'm dicing or chopping, because then the structure of the onion holds your pieces in place while you're cutting or chopping. I'm going to go ahead and chop these into approximately 1-inch pieces. Once I'm done with the onion, I'll go ahead and move on to the bell pepper. Now, when I'm chopping a bell pepper, I like to place the top down, cut from the bottom, halfway through, stop at the stalk, and then just split it in half to seed and core. Once I've seeded and cored my bell pepper, I'm going to go ahead and roughly chop these into 1-inch pieces as well. If you want, once you've chopped your bell peppers, you can go ahead and rinse them just to make sure that you've gotten all the seeds. Next, we'll prepare the pork chops. As you can see, there's quite a big layer of fat on the side, so we're going to trim that fat off, and then we're going to chop these into 1-inch cubes. Next, we'll season the pork. We'll move it over to a bowl, add a splash of olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon each of cayenne pepper or chili powder if cayenne's too spicy for you, black pepper, garlic powder, and salt. Once all those ingredients are in the bowl, just combine until the pork is coated in the spice mixture. Next, I'll season the vegetables. I'm going to go ahead and use the same bowl for all of them. And for all the vegetables, I'm just going to add a splash of olive oil and salt and pepper to taste. After I've seasoned the meat and vegetables, I'm going to go ahead and start preheating my oven to 375 degrees. Then I'm going to start to skewer my shish kebabs. Now, traditionalists will tell you to skewer alternating bits of meat and vegetables, and I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea because onions have a different cook time from bell pepper, have a different cook time from tomatoes, have a different cook time from pork. So I'm going to suggest skewering one type of ingredient on each skewer. This way, I can cook the specific items for exactly how long they should be cooked. And it prevents me from having overcooked meat and tomatoes because the bell peppers and onions have the longest cook time. It's okay if your onions don't have their layers completely separated. They'll still cook just as well. Now I'll go ahead and season and skewer my bell peppers. Again, just a touch of olive oil and salt and pepper to taste. Lastly, I'll season and skewer the grape tomatoes. Again, just a splash of olive oil and salt and pepper to taste for these. Next, I'm going to separate the skewers out by cooking time. I'm going to go ahead and set the tomatoes, pork, and onions off to the side and begin by baking just the bell peppers because they have the longest cook time of about 25 minutes. Once the oven is preheated, I'll go ahead and put the bell peppers in for about 7 minutes before I add the onions. While I'm waiting on the bell peppers, I'll go ahead and make the raspberry orange glaze. To make the raspberry orange glaze, I'm going to combine a 1/4 cup of raspberry jelly, and a 1/4 cup is approximately 4 tablespoons with a tablespoon of orange juice. And I'm going to mix that together. If your glaze is too thick, you can add a little bit more juice just to lighten it. And then I'll set that aside. It's been 7 minutes, so now I'm going to add the onions and set a timer for an additional 5 minutes and put that back in the oven. While the onions and bell pepper continue to cook, I'm going to go ahead and start basting the meat. I'll just take a little bit of the raspberry orange glaze, baste one side, flip it over, and baste it all the way around. This is just the first time that we're basting the meat. We'll baste it again when we add the tomatoes. It's been about 5 minutes, so I'm going to pull out the peppers and onions. And I'm going to add the basted meat. And then I'll set another 8-minute timer. It's been 8 minutes, so now I'm going to remove the pan from the oven and I'm going to baste the pork one more time. Then I'll add the tomato skewer and let it go for 5 more minutes. It's now been a total of 25 minutes of cook time at 375 degrees. And our shish kebabs are just about done. I'm going to go ahead and remove those from the oven and serve them over a bowl of rice. I'll just take a bit of each skewer and use a fork to slide off the kebab ingredients and serve it over plain white rice. Thank you for joining me to learn how to make shish kebabs today. And remember that if you like the content, please subscribe.